Welcome to the second Zoom gathering. You know, a couple months ago, I had no idea what Zoom was, and here we all are using it. How the times have changed. So tonight we're going to relax. You're going to have whatever you're drinking, and we're going to discuss books and history, and we're going to just have a nice evening. So no current politics or social issues. And secondly, everybody's muted right now so that we don't disturb the presentation as people come on and things like that. I'm going to give a little presentation for about 15 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. And at that point, everybody will be unmuted. So for questions and answers in our discussion. All right. So we're going to start with a toast. The toast is done with some Wente wine. Now here, I'm not paid for this, by the way. This is not product placement. This is a really nice wine. It's from the Monterey area of California. And the wine owner, the vineyard owner, is named Eric Wente. I was guest author on the Queen Victoria in the Mediterranean in 2007. And he was the guest vintner. And we met him on the ship. It turns out he had one of my books. That was an affair of honor about the Mediterranean and North Africa. And it turns out that he became one of my readers on that voyage. So I got turned on to his wine, and he got turned on to my books. It's a great wine, and tonight I propose a toast. It's the appropriate toast for Tuesday night in the officers' wardrooms. That's where the officers drink and eat of the Royal Navy. And the toast for Tuesday night is, raise your glass or raise your hand, to our ships. Tonight we're going to talk about chapters and characters in my books. And I'm going to give you a little inside knowledge about how I do the chapters. Now, most of you have read my books, and you know that I do something different at the beginning of each chapter. I put the place and the time, the date. That is actually a very old-fashioned technique. It's very latter 19th century. It's very Victorian and Edwardian, turn of the century. That's what they did, even with novels back then. And at the beginning of a chapter, you got the word on where it was happening and when it was happening. That's very valuable for readers, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback about that over the years. Also, from book 7 on, these are memoirs, and that's exactly what a naval officer would do. He is very factual, and he talks about where things happen and when. And all you have to do is read the logs of a naval vessel, and you find out just how factual that they are. They cram a lot of information in a little area. So I wanted my readers to get that feeling of a naval officer's memoirs. Now you're going to all go back to the books and look at it. My chapters are shorter than most authors, which means I have more chapters in the book. I do that for this reason. I want my readers to be able to, in one sit-down reading, I want them to be able to get through a chapter. It's a sense of accomplishment. It's a sense of a natural break, and they can take that break. Many of my readers, including me, I do the same thing. Read books at night just before I'm going to go to sleep. So it's a good feeling to end on a chapter. Now I'm going to be upfront with you. When you get to the end of the chapter, I want you so curious about what's going on in the next chapter that you'll read that one too. In fact, if you don't get any sleep that night, that's a compliment to me. And if you don't make it to work the next day, I'm like happy because you love my book. So I want, and I've had that happen. I've had many readers, email me and say, "Oh man, I couldn't put it down." That's the greatest compliment you can tell them. So that's why I do short chapters, and I try to leave you with an anticipation of what in the world's going to happen next. So the chapters are smaller, and as the book progresses, they get even more concise. Did you ever notice that? They do. The chapters usually are about 5 to 6 pages, and near the end, they are now about 3 to 4 pages. So that's how you increase the pacing and the anticipation. Now, I want to talk about characters. Characters are the jewels of my books, and they populate my books. My books take place all over the world, and I have a lot of different characters. I want to read a chapter. This is one of my favorite chapters. It's very short, and it's the first chapter of Honorable Lives. In order to write this chapter, I had to learn how to fight, to fence with a saber. Now, there's modern saber fighting, but I actually had to do the research, and the saber master, by the way, coincidentally, is the artist that did this I showed you last week, his brilliant work. His name is Charles Johnson. He's also a bladed weapons expert, martial arts expert, and master fencer. He taught me how to fence with a saber using the Hungarian method and also the Spanish method from 1888, time period. For 4 months, I trained in saber fighting. By the time I was done, I knew how to saber fight in both schools, and I also had a bad right knee. And Charles Johnson, my saber master, wanted me to continue on, maybe join a team, and I decided that discretion was the better part of that. I did not join the team, and I have not fought with a saber since then, but I still have my saber, and I still know how. So I want to read this chapter, and I'm going to, because I'm older now, I have to get my glasses. Chapter 1, this is Honorable Lives. Chapter 1, a matter of naval honor. Palace of His Excellency, Don Sabas Marin y Gonzalez, the Captain General of Cuba, Plaza de Armas, Havana, Tuesday, the 25th of September, 1888. The man was there to kill me. I knew at the instant he turned those smoldering black eyes towards me. 2 minutes later, when his name was announced, I saw the resemblance and understood exactly why he was going to kill me. 2 years earlier, I'd faced another enemy with those same eyes. Then, seeing the satisfied sneer on the face of another man at the back of a crowd, I realized how my accidental death had been orchestrated. It was the perfect trap. Well, the man who has been trapped is none other than Peter Wake. Peter Wake, of course, is a sailor, and he's a naval intelligence officer. He is a warrior, but first of all, for his whole life, since he was 13 years old in New England, he was a sailor. And he describes in one of his memoirs, Darkest Shade of Honor, in chapter 31, which is called The Electric Man. Later on in that chapter, you get to meet Thomas Edison. And I want to read to you his description of what it's like for a sailor to come in to a tropical island at night with all the anticipation that that. Chapter 31, The Electric Man, Friday, 2nd of April, 1886. The lower Gulf Coast of Florida, near Sanibel Island. Normally, under the idyllic conditions so prevalent in the tropics, you can hear the surf as you approach a reef or a beach at night under sail, accompanied by the earthy, feminine scents from nearby land, nature's perfume everywhere. The sound of gentle surf stimulates a sailor's best memories. It brings a smile of appreciation and of anticipation, for the sound means liberty ashore. The voyage is ending. Even the low surf has a loud rhythmic rumble of symbolic import, the weight of a vast sea falling upon the very edge of the land. Two worlds mingling, like a man and a woman meeting for the first time, evaluating the other, touching, hoping something good will come up. It's a majestic sound, really, far more than merely a sign of land. To me, a gentle surf along a tropical beach is a metronome of life, calming, inspiring, a constant measure of time. This primordial stimulus, subtly sensual to the inner core of a man, ignites a response deep inside, like when that demure girl looks you in the eye while she hums a romantic song. Well, those are two chapters that I wanted to read for you. And now I want to talk about the characters. Peter Wake, who wrote both of those in his memoirs. I assisted him, as you know. Who is Peter Wake and how in the world did I come up with it? Okay, the name is an interesting thing. I wanted a monosyllabic, big word, one syllable name that's easy to remember. Okay? I wanted a nice name to begin with, Peter. I wanted to have a name that was easy to remember and kind of ominous and had many connotations. There I was out at sea, sailing east at sunset, and I looked behind me at the sunset. I had a rum drink in my hand. Sailors called them sundowner. And what did I see behind the vessel? The wake. And I thought, oh, wow, perfect. What different connotations we have with that. So, interesting point. About a couple years later, I am on a phone call with a big marketing person from New York. She was gushing about the name of the main character. She said, it's brilliant. You've got the perfect sounds. And she said, did you come up with that or did the PR person do that? And I said, well, no, I came up with that. She said, well, of course, you know the perfect sounds that you came up with. And I said, I didn't want to look like an idiot in front of this big marketing person from New York City. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. And she said, I guess maybe you don't. And she said, you have the sensitive sound of Peter, and then you have the hard masculine sound of Wake. She said, sensitive, masculine, it's the perfect protagonist. So I called my friend, actually I went over and drank some of his rum, Randy White, whose main protagonist is Doc Ford, similar. And I said, Randy, you've got like the perfect protagonist, man. You've got sensitive and you've got masculine. And he said, what the hell are you talking about? And I told him the story and we both cracked up. Who is Peter Wake? He is not me. People think he's me. I'm not that good. I'm not that good of a person. I wish I was. I wish I was that strong and smart. He is a compilation of great men that I've known, great commanding officers, and some decent people, including women, that I have known that exhibit through their actions the concept of honor, of doing the right thing for the right reasons at the right time, even when nobody's looking. That's Peter Wake. Here's a little inside tidbit for you. Did you ever notice that I've never described Peter Wake in any detail? You know generally what he looks like. There's no detail about it. I did that on purpose. Everybody else is described in detail. I want you to imagine Peter Wake in your own mind. I want him to be yours. And when I speak with readers and I ask them, describe Peter Wake for me, I get all kinds of descriptions. It's great. I love it. And that way, Peter Wake belongs to the readers. So that's Peter Wake. Sean Rourke, his Irish-American sidekick. He's been with him from the beginning, the first book. He's the bosun. He's the petty officer. Wake is an officer. They're not supposed to fraternize. They're best friends. Sean Rourke is based on my cousin, my beloved and brilliant and hilarious cousin, Sean Clooney, a historian from County Wexford in Ireland. My Irish family still lives there. Sean is gone now, but I got to know him, and I love him. And many of the witticisms that Sean Rourke uses, I've heard in various pubs and bars from my cousin Sean from Ireland. So here's the cousin Sean. Now Mike Woodgard. Michael Woodgard, who is that character? Well, last week I explained to you that at one point I had a contest for naming my fifth book. And Michael Woodgard, a reader and friend in Alexandria, Virginia, right outside Washington, won the contest. Out of 374 title suggestions, narrowed it down to him, and he became a character in the books. And so I introduced him in An Affair of Honor. This is his title. And I introduced him. He is a soldier of fortune who meets Peter Wake in a train station in Italy. It's in Genoa, Italy. And he has just observed a panhandler abusing a dog. He's been kicking a dog on the train station. I'm going to read to you the description of how we meet Michael Woodgard, soldier of fortune. Wake was settling in, about to read the foreign issue of London Times, when he noticed a commotion on the platform 40 feet from his window. A tall, barrel-chested passenger in an oversized plain tan coat carrying a valise had grabbed a local panhandler. Wake had seen him plying his trade aggressively earlier and thought him a pickpocket. He grabbed him by the collar and was kicking him in the rear. The street scoundrel produced a knife and flourished in the face of the tall man, screaming something in Italian. The man in the coat immediately let go of the thief, but did not retreat. Instead, his lip curled up on one side, not quite a smile, but close, as if he regarded his adversary with curiosity. The man in the coat was different from the small crowd who gathered around. He stood straight, with short-cropped black hair, large, expressionless eyes, and a Van Dyke goatee worn like an insignia of rank. His appearance marked him as a military or naval officer. Nationality as yet unknown. Without warning, that officer's right hand swept up, grasped the knife hand of his assailant, swung the blade through an arc, and in one fluid movement plunged it into the thief's eye. The military man then executed a right oblique and marched up the steps onto the train. Later, when he enters the compartment with Peter Wake, Wake says, "What happened out there?" And Woodgard says, "He abused a dog." That's the kind of man that we have with Michael Woodgard. Now, Theodore Roosevelt, as we all know, is very real, and you meet him in 1886 in January, when he is 27 years old. And Peter Wake has been ordered to attend a social function. He hates social functions. Most of you know that by now. He is in a political social function. He's there to show his uniform and try to encourage people to support the naval budget. Wake hates it stuff. Here is how he meets Theodore Roosevelt, age 27 at that point. He's talking about another Navy commander who outranks him, who is introducing the people, accompanied by a smaller fellow, several decades his junior, who looked disturbed. Whether angry or happy, I could not tell. So this is the man who knows Panama, eh, Commodore? Said the spectacled young man as he stared quizzically at my Lion of the Atlas medal from Morocco. The accent was a combination of busy New York and cultured New England. The tone was pure energy. His eyes shifted to my Legion of Honor medal. I caught a glimpse over a bow over at the bar, trying to unsuccessfully not smirk at my capture by this man so early in the game. He raised a glass mockingly towards me, and the Commodore said, "Yes, sir, this is Commander Peter Wake. He'll be happy to tell you about Panama and the French Canal." The fellow got even more agitated. "Well, then, he's precisely the man I need to talk to." I had not a clue who this possibly deranged person was, so I glanced expectantly at Chandler, who obliged me by explaining, "Commander Wake, this young man is the author of that naval history book that's going around, Mr. Theodore Roosevelt." They become friends, and they are friends for the rest of their lives. We have to remember that Peter Wake is 20 years older than Theodore Roosevelt. We think of Roosevelt as presidents being older. This one wasn't. He was the youngest president to this day. And Wake is a mentor for Theodore Roosevelt. And as you read the books, Roosevelt is in many of the books. You get the sense that Wake is a calming influence and a mentor and an educational influence on Theodore Roosevelt. It's great fun to write about him. Most of you know that he's one of my favorite presidents. Now, I have Jose Marti in my books. In that same book, The Darkest Shade of Honor, which is about mainly Cuba, Peter Wake meets him. He's in New York City, operating out of New York City, and Wake ends up becoming a lifelong friend with Jose Marti. Jose Marti is my favorite Cuban of history. He is renowned across Latin America. One other character I want to bring to your attention, and he is in my latest book, Honoring the Enemy. His name is Ed Law. Was a reader of mine for many years, a remarkable person. He was a lawyer in Pensacola, and he was a Marine Corps aviator in World War II, and then a reserve Marine aviator for many years after. He loved my books. He had to get some of them on audio, and he constantly wrote me very supportive letters. He did suggest that I get a Marine in my books. And so for my last book, which has won several awards, I put Ed Law in as the second lieutenant, accompanying Peter Wake in the jungles of Cuba during the combat. When I went on book tour for this book, I wanted Ed Law to be come to my event that I did. I was speaking and doing a presentation at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, at the Naval Station, the big thing. I wanted to give him this book and tell everybody, bring him on stage, tell everybody the story. And unfortunately, Ed died before that event, and it broke my heart. But his wife was there. His wife, Carol, I brought her up onto the stage, and I presented this book to her. And I said, "This is for a Marine Corps hero, your husband. So when you read this book, and you read about Edwin Law, that's who I named that character after. I love the character so much that I promoted him to captain. 2 books in the future that I'm writing right now. And he is going to be with Wake with the Russian fleet in 1904, 1905. That's it for the chapters and the characters. And we're going to open it up now. We only have a couple more minutes, but we're going to open it up and unmute everybody for any questions that you may have. So do we have any questions on how I do the chapters and how I come up with these characters and describe them? Or tell me who your favorite character is.
Thank you for telling us the background of who different characters were. That's very interesting.
I didn't hear if there was a question there, but thank you. Interesting point. About 40% of my readers are women, and I'm extremely proud of that. That's unusual in my genre. And many women, it turns out, have told me anecdotally, and I mean that they would love to be married to Peter Wake. They would love to have Peter Wake, but they would like to spend one weekend with Sean Rourke. So, and I don't know in what order, but I hope the Sean Rourke thing would come through. But so the characters really appeal in various ways.
My question goes to where Peter Wake has visited Puerto Rico, and they rode up the river to where these former Confederates have started a couple of villages.
Yeah.
And being an Army brat, I went to 2 years of high school in Puerto Rico, and I never heard of Confederates starting a colony there. Was that factual, and how did you find out about it?
So after the Civil War, Confederate officers, particularly officers, but soldiers too, spread all across Latin America. About 50,000 went to Mexico. About 5,000 went to British Honduras. Several thousand went to Cuba. There were also several hundred that went to Puerto Rico. Now, why would they go particularly to Cuba and Puerto Rico? Because the Spanish were pro-Confederate and because slavery was still legal until 1886, particularly in Cuba. And so they found welcoming people there. Most of the Confederates, and there's famously Confederates that went to Brazil and started a colony there that's still there. Most of the Confederates that left and went to Latin America returned back to the South when the economic situation and the political situation got a little more comfortable for them. But yeah, they spread throughout Latin America. And most of them were not causing trouble. But the government did not know, the federal government in Washington wasn't sure, if they were going to what they did. Good question.
Kurt Anderson here. How are you?
Hi.
You mentioned Peter Wake, and you don't give him a lot of the characteristics, like what he looks like, I guess, and those things. Is there a model for him, or two models?
What's interesting is I'm the only author I know that has actually had a statue made of my main character. And about 10 years ago or so, a very talented sculptor here in Lee County in Southwest Florida, where I live, made a mock-up of a statue. It was just the mock-up. And he did his interpretation of what Peter Wake would look like from my second book, Point of Honor. And it was really cool. And we had an unveiling in a little plaza in downtown Fort Myers. And it was just like a plaster kind of mock-up. But it was a thrill, for an author to see his main character kind of come to, a solid image. And it was his image, it was his impression. So it was merely the cast. Unfortunately, he was looking to have investors come and pay a lot of money to make an actual permanent statue, and that didn't happen. Okay, next question.
Bill Eckert here.
Hi, Bill.
I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. After we sold our snowbird house in Cape Coral, just down the road from you, we moved to Chapel Hill. And when I drive toward Raleigh, right across the Jordan Lake Bridge, I enter Wake County. Is there any connection between the Wakes of North Carolina and Peter Wake?
No, but let's start that rumor. And
Okay.
by the way, Chapel Hill is one of the prettiest places I've ever been. My wife is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate from UNC at Chapel Hill. Now,
Beautiful.
let's just have a drink on that.
Yes,
Just
gorgeous campus. I recommend a visit to that campus to any of the folks listening. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
we were just there last year, and she showed me all the places of the camp. Any other question? Someone?
Do you write chapters chronologically and/or do you change them before finishing?
Excellent question. Wow.
It's from Jesse.
Do I write my chapters chronologically, and do I change them later? Yes, I do. I write my books. It takes about a year and a half to do the writing. It takes me 4 years to do a book project. At any one time, that means because I want to have a book out every year, I have to work on 4 to 5 book projects at any time. I am kind of a linear person, I guess. So I do it chronologically, and that helps me keep everything straight. Yes, I rewrite chapters all the time. I go back over a book many, many times before I turn it into the publisher, the editor, the publisher. That's a very good question.
Bob, Dave Klein, can you hear me?
Hi, Dave.
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fine. My co-adventurer in Cuba.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a little trouble getting in, but so I missed the first part. But did you say anything about when your next book's coming out?
Good question. I didn't say it on this issue, on this gathering, but I will now. My next book is called Word of Honor, and it comes out in October. And on my 4th Zoom gathering, I'm going to do the cover reveal for the book cover. And I'm going to tell you a little story, some stories about that book, the inside story. I think you're going to get a big kick out of it. Now, on my next Zoom gathering, which is next Tuesday night, 8 o'clock, I'm really looking forward to this because I'm going to talk about the research. My books are very detailed. I'm well known for my research. I'm going to talk about the research I do, and I'm going to actually show you some extremely rare artifacts from around the world that ended up in my books. Many of them are weapons that end up either being used by Wake or used against Wake. And so you'll get to see them. They're very real. They still function. So that's next Tuesday. Remember, we're doing this each Tuesday for about a half hour, starting 8 o'clock. And it's just a nice break in the week. And it's fun for me, and I hope it's fun for you. Now, does anybody have a final question?
I got a question.
Michael Dorff.
Hi. Since this is about character, I wanted to talk a little bit, have you talk a little bit about Peter's fictional character. You mentioned he's kind of an aspirational figure. Do you think it's possible for a political operative, and without, I'm not being political, but for someone who's doing the important work that he has done, to actually be as honorable as he has been as a character and be as successful? And is that why the fictional character is so successful and so intriguing, and why we all love him? Is because his principles are just a little bit beyond what is actually possible to accomplish the things he's doing?
That's a very good question. And I don't think it's beyond what people can achieve. And I will bring to you, I commend to you the example of a man from 120 years ago. His name is Theodore Roosevelt, a very honorable man who was known for his honesty, his hard work, his ethics. So I think that one of the reasons that Peter Wake and Roosevelt get along so well is that they share that sense of honor. That when all else is factored in, the prevailing factor is what is the right thing to do? What is the decent thing to do? What is the honorable thing to do? In my opinion, honor is a guide for your life, and it's a shield to help explain what you've done. It can be misused, of course. We've seen many examples of that. And in future books and in past books, we've seen people that have misused honor. But Peter Wake tries, he really tries hard. And so did Theodore Roosevelt. And Theodore Roosevelt was famous for that. That's why he ended up being the enemy of so many people in certain areas of power in the government, outside the government, because he stood for what was right.
Mm.
And, you know, the good guys can win. So that's it. Theodore Roosevelt is a great example of a real person with a sense of honor. Well,
Thank you.
Wake always tries to do honor as an addendum. And sometimes he doesn't follow orders that he believes are dishonorable. And that lands him in trouble. But amazingly, at the end of the situation, it's proven that the honorable way is the right way the whole time. So that's where we're at. I want to thank everybody for coming. This has been great fun, and I love this. I talk with other authors. They are so jealous of me because I have the most enthusiastic readers who had named themselves many, many years ago the Wakings after Peter Wake. And I have a lot of fun with Wakings, and I've had a lot of fun with you tonight. And I'm looking forward to next Tuesday night. It's going to be a night of adventure. I'm going to bring some stuff in to show you that I guarantee you've never seen it before. And if you will remember it from the books, but this is real life stuff. So I wish you all a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.